Okay. Okay, we're holding by a Mishnah, Memhei Amid Beis, on the bottom. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. It's about learning. We should have a base of English. Mishnah starts like this: if he's cooking the shlamim, not if. This is what he was supposed to do. Why it says Haya. He's supposed to cook it, and he could overcook it. Shulkan is to boil for a long time. We had in Nidarim that it meant undercook. It's either overcook or undercook. It says that a kayan leitelis Israel b'shelim in ayil. The kayan comes and he takes the cooked foreleg from the riyam, the riyam of the Nazir. And what else does he take? Bechalas matzah achas. I'm adjusting that. Bechalas matzah achas minasal. He takes one challah from the basket. Brakik matzah achas, and he also takes also a wafer from the basket. I don't remember how many he had. Does it say in there how many there were in total? How many challahs there were?
One. For both, it says one.
No, but how many, out of how many? Doesn't say. Okay. Let me just see if it says how many there were supposed to be.
Yesterday, there was a discussion of where you make sacrifices.
Right.
But you might need to review for us, because I didn't get it. It doesn't interfere with today's lesson.
See this room over here is the room of the Nazirim. These are the stairs where he would stand to offer a sacrifice. The Nazir, the Messiah, and it was slaughtered at the entrance. It says it at the entrance to the tent of meeting, which is here. But it wasn't really there. That was just a reference. He would reference to the shlamim, which was slaughtered somewhere in this area. And once that was offered, then he could shave his head. So that was what we were studying yesterday.
Were there three sacrifices?
And the three sacrifices. There were two. The oila and the chatas were slaughtered over here.
North.
Yeah.
This side, yeah. This is east. That's north.
This is east.
East. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Beautiful.
This is the professor. Okay, so let me just see over here. How many challahs were there? I'm not seeing it.
Whenever you had there were four houses.
Yeah. The Nason al Kapi Nazir, he puts the Zraya, the challah. It's called the base of my gate.
This is Lishka
No. Lishka Sagazis is somewhere over here. Maybe this is Lishka
has to be inside and out.
Mostly the same. Okay. The next copy of Nazir Minif, and he puts them on the hands of the Nazir. This is we're talking about. The Kayin is taking these items and he puts it on the hands of the Nazir and he waves them. He waves them in the different directions, like we do with the lulav. And then the Nazir is allowed to drink his wine. Now, this is obviously following a different opinion we learned before. We learned before that whatever sacrifice, once it's slaughtered, or once the blood was sprinkled, no, we learned that the blood was sprinkled, he could shave his head. And after he shaves his head, then he could drink wine and all of this. But now we're learning that after the waving, then the Nazir can drink wine and become tummy. We'll see in the Gemara. This is following. Reb Shimon Aimer Kibin Shenizik Alav Echad Min Adamen. Reb Shimon says that once one of the bloods was sprinkled, then he's already permissible. That's the opinion that we learned before. That the Nazirite is already ended once one of the bloods of one of the three sacrifices was sprinkled. So the Gemara says like this: Tan Rabbanan. Verse says that after the sacrifices are brought, then the Nazir and he shaves his head, then he will drink wine. Achar Maisim Kulim, that means after everything. Div Rebbe Lezer, that's the words of Rebbe Lezer.
Thank you for bringing this in, Professor. The Shechita is over here. The Nazir standing over here. So somebody has to now bring the foreleg and
Up to him at the door.
bring it out.
At the
He's
doorway.
standing at the steps.
Right.
Right. And so where does the challah and the kikar come from? Here also?
Yeah.
So everything gets brought out to him.
He's not Tameh. He can go in at the first 11 Amos. If he's Tameh,
You can go up to here.
yeah. If
This
he's
line,
Tameh,
yeah.
then would have to be.
This-
If he was
this line
called
is
Mechusik
halachic
Kapara,
distinction.
not Tameh. Actually,
Hmm?
I don't know if it was a step. I think it was just. Was it a step there?
I don't think so. I think it was just a line. These are for rings. These are half rings.
No, that is for everything. That's the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies.
So you're saying he may have come inside the Nazir.
But they didn't. We were discussing where they would shave his head. We wouldn't shave his head inside. That would be disrespectful. So they probably shaved his head somewhere here. And where was it being cooked? Maybe it was being cooked by the Lishkas and Nazirim inside this room. And that would be more respectful rather than to shave his head in this. Okay. So the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer is that only after the whole procedure, all the rituals are done, then the Nazir is allowed to open up that bottle of wine and start to drink. The Chacham say no. Once the rituals start, once the first part of this begins, they bring one sacrifice, he's already able to start drinking the wine. First was the sacrifice. Then he's supposed to shave his head. Now, what we're learning here, according to Chacham, is that even if he didn't shave his head, he could still already drink the wine. That's what we're learning. We were learning, no, we learned before that when was he allowed to shave the head? After one of the sacrifices. That's what we were studying. We didn't throw in when is he permissible in wine? Now that's what we're mentioning now, right? Okay. And my time out there, Abanon, what's the reason for the sages that say that you can already drink the wine immediately? One verse says, then the Nazir can drink the wine. And then it also says, after he shaves his head. Just like when is he allowed to shave his head after one of the sacrifices is brought, so too he's allowed to drink wine after one of the sacrifices is brought. He doesn't have to wait for the rest. Now, it's a little bit of an issue here. When the verse says, "V'achar yishte hanazir yayin," what does it say before that? Do you have in your Gemara? What does it say before that? It says before that. And after that, they're not telling you the whole verse. And it is written in the previous verse, and the priest shall take the cooked foreleg, place on the palace of Nazir after he has shaven his Nazirship. So after they've already done the waving, and he has shaven his Nazirship, then he may drink the wine. Yeah, you want to bring the chumash? Bamidbar. So now we're saying that it doesn't have to be afterwards. It's funny because we're making a drasha, and it seems to like contradict the order of the verses.
And it first quoted 620, and now it's quoting 619.
Right. So, verse 13 says, this is the laws of the Nazarite on the day of the period of his Nazarite vow is completed. He goes to the entrance of the tent of meeting, brings his offering, brings a male lamb, a burnt offering, a female lamb as a sin offering, a ram as the peace offering, brings a basket of unleavened bread, 10 loaves. Oh, that's what it is. 10 loaves of fine flour mixed with oil, 10 unleavened wafers. Okay. He presents them before Hashem, brings the ram, priest would perform the service. After the peace offering is slaughtered at the entrance of the tent, the Nazarite would shave his head, to take the hair and place it on fire under the peace offering, as we learned yesterday. Priest should then take the cooked foreleg and one unleavened loaf and one unleavened wafer and place them on the hands of the Nazarite. The priest should wave them. Okay. After this, the Nazarite, they added in parentheses, the former Nazarite may drink wine. So the literal meaning, reading of the verses is that you have a whole process here. You can't just drink wine until, you can't just drink wine after the blood is sprinkled. You have all the waving and there's a lot of things in has to shave. But the Chachamim are saying, the Rabbanan are saying that, look, it says in the Pasuk that after he shaves, shaving is just one action.
The shaving could only be done after all of this.
That's right. Take a look. And we also have after he drinks the wine. So we're going to say that, you see, if I would say the way Hillel is suggesting, so I have the word after, the achar, and after. And I'm using that word as a gezerah shava, a verbal analogy. It says hereafter, it says thereafter. If you just want to say that what it means is after everything, so then what do I do with that gezerah shava? If we know from tradition that there's a gezerah shava that's comparing the after by this and the after by that. So it's that word after is being compared. So it has to be teaching me something. Now, if I just read it straight, and at the end of everything, then he's allowed to drink wine, so then I don't have anything to do with the word after. So what I have to do is I have to take the word after, and it has to teach me something. It's teaching me that just like he shaves his head after the blood is sprinkled, so too he's allowed to drink wine after the blood is sprinkled. Gemara says maybe adika tarvayu, maybe that's not the way it means. Maybe only after the head is shaven, then he's allowed to drink the wine. It says ihachi gzer shava lamli. So then what do I do with the gzer shava? What do I do with the verbal analogy? In other words, I know that there's a verbal analogy. The question is, what's it teaching me? In other words, they had tradition that there was a gzer shava here, and what the sages learned from it is that they're allowed to drink the wine even before the haircut, just after one of the sacrifices is offered. First one.
Wow.
Okay.
That doesn't go against here where it says that after he's done everything, like he's a former Nazir. 'Cause I would think that he's allowed to drink wine because he's not a Nazir.
Right. Now, there was a lot of steps to this. So when it says at the end, after this, could drink the wine. After what? Right? After what? So after this, what is this? What is the 1 second. Yeah, so it doesn't actually say in the Torah this. It just says v'achar and after. This is added in.
But they connect that after the sprinkling of blood, so that's why the tradition is like that.
Right. Okay.
The tradition is Moshe Mount Sinai.
Right.
So,
Amar Rav says, Tinufa ben Nazir Ma'keves. The waving that the Nazir does affects the validity of everything. As if he, for whatever reason, he doesn't wave, then everything is not valid. He can't drink the wine until everything is done, until the waving is done.
What do you mean? He put all these things, or he lifts up? Or not doing stuff?
The Nazir he lifts up the Kohen and the Nazir wave the leg and the breads.
The hands are on.
I think under each other. Yeah. Well, Aliba the man, we have a machlekes here. So who is Rav following? Ilaim Aliba the Rabbanan. You want to say that Rav is being strict over here, and he's following the Rabbanan. It's a big problem because according to the Rabbanan, you don't even have to shave the head, and the Nazir is already allowed to drink the wine once the blood was sprinkled. So the waving is for sure Tinufa Mibai, the waving which was done after, right? He shaved his head first, and then they did the waving. Is that correct? The Gilach, at least in the verses. The Nazir shaves his head at the entrance to the tent of meeting. He throws it under the fire while it's cooking. They take the arm out of the pot, right? And then they wave it. The cooked arm, it has to be cooked. So, and he was shaven before they. So, according to the Rabbanan, if he's already able to drink the wine even before he shaves, so for sure he can drink the wine before the waving. The waving was done after that. What does Rav mean that the waving affects the validity? El Ali, but the Rebbe Lezer must be according to Rebbe Lezer that Rav said this view. Rebbe Lezer says that, I think that's the first opinion of the Mishnah, is that after it was waved, then the Nazir can drink wine and become impure to a corpse. So that Rav would be following that view. The only problem is, El Ali b'der Rabbanan. I'm sorry, El Ali b'der Rebbe Lezer must be following the opinion of Rebbe Lezer. According to but that Pshita, that's already obvious. Rebbe Lezer says that you have to finish the whole procedure in order to be able to drink the wine. So why do I need Rav to come in and tell me something that Rebbe Lezer already told me? Rav is an Amira. Rebbe Lezer is much earlier, 200 years earlier. Well, Gemara says, in general, whenever we have the waving, we always say that it's just a mitzvah min hamavchar. The waving wasn't performed, the mitzvah, the atonement was still received. So I could have thought that the same thing applies here, that the waving is just an extra thing. So comes along Rav and says that no, over here it's actually ma'akev. Over here the waving affects the validity. It's like a different thing. So even though I know when he's supposed to drink the wine, but I could have thought that maybe the waving doesn't affect the validity. Rav says no, the waving is actually part of this. As the wait tells, waving is done. Where it says Amima Akva, does the waving really affect the validity? We have a question from a Brisa. Brisa says, this is the view of the Nazir. And when it says that, this is the law of the Nazir. When it says that, the Brisa comes in and says whether the Nazir has palms, whether he doesn't have palms. There's a wave on his palm. Which means like this. if he has palms, then he's supposed to wave. If he doesn't have palms, then how can he wave? But we say this is the law of the Nazir, which means that even if he doesn't have palms, somehow it's valid anyway. He's missing his hand. They were amputated. He doesn't have hands. So he's able to follow these laws of the Nazir, even though he doesn't have hands. Now, if he's able to follow the laws of the Nazir when he doesn't have hands, then maybe when he has the hands, okay. But what we're seeing is that if he doesn't have hands, everything is still valid, which means that if he does have hands, then maybe the not waving of it is still acceptable. If it's not waved, because you see that it's not so significant, because if he doesn't have hands, it's fine. So how can you tell me now, but we're assuming this price is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. If he doesn't have hands, then he can't. Well, right now, the way we're thinking is, if he doesn't have hands, it's fine. He's finished his Naziris. If he does have hands, probably would be the same thing, even if he, for whatever reason, didn't wave. You see, sometimes he doesn't wave if he doesn't have hands. Okay. This would imply that the waving is not affecting the validity, because you see he's able to finish the Naziris even without palms, which means that he didn't wave it. The Gemara says, "Velo hadatanya." 1 second, say that. I have another brisa. This brisa says, "Zeis teres and Nazir." This is the law of the Nazir. Bein sheish leisar, bein shein leisar. Whether he has here or whether he doesn't have here. Now, 1 second. Hachanami d'lei makva. You want to say that if he doesn't have here, so how do you want to? We're doing a comparison here. In the last price, we said if he has hands, it's if he doesn't have hands, it's the same as if he does have hands. Just like if he doesn't have hands, he doesn't need to wave. So when he has the hands, he doesn't need to wave. Now we're saying, I have another brisa. Brisa says whether he has here or whether he doesn't have here. Now, if you're going to say, just like when he doesn't have here, there's nothing to shave. So when he has here, it's okay if he doesn't shave. But we know that that's not acceptable. So it must be that you have to do it the other way. Just like when he has here, he has to shave it. So when he doesn't have here, he has to shave it. Now, how does he shave it if he doesn't have here? Problem. Maybe he can never get out of it. Let's take a look.
In the example, if he doesn't have hands, would it count like when you're presented a mitzvah and you want to do it but you're unable to? Like it counts like if you did it, no?
Right.
Is that like what is being applied here for the palms?
Right. We weren't viewing it exactly like that. We may view it like that shortly, but right now we're viewing it that you see that the waving of it was not affecting the validity of it. You see, because when he doesn't have hands, it's still fine. That's what we're saying. Soon we're gonna switch things around. But meanwhile, that's now. So we said by the here that we go the other way. We're saying we have to learn it the other way. Vahatanya, and we have a brisa. Nazir Memoira. Let's say there's a Nazir that's bald. That's how they translate Memoira over there, right? Bishama Yomrim Eina Tzarech Laver Taral Reishi. Bishama says that he doesn't need to put the razor on his head. Doesn't need to shave his head. He doesn't have hair. Basil Tzarech Laver Taral Reishi. Basil says that he does. Okay, now, what does this mean? Ravina explains, "My Eina Tzarech LeBeishamai." What does Beishamai mean that he doesn't need to put the razor on his head? Eina Tzarech Vein Takana. He doesn't need to, and there's no hope. There's no solution. There's no solution for him. Bishami says he doesn't need to put the razor on his head. Means that there's no reason to doing a fake shaving, because if there's no hair to cut, then he's never going to get out of the Naziris. So what this means now is that when I have this brisa that says that just like if there's here, same thing if he has here, so too if he doesn't have here. According to Beis Shammai, what that means is that if he doesn't have here, then it affects the validity of this whole process. So too, when we go to the other brisa that says whether he has hands or whether he doesn't have hands, this is the laws of the Nazir. That means that if he doesn't have hands, it would affect the whole validity of the sacrifice. That's the way we're going to learn it now, that it's like a stringency, according to Beis Shammai. Which this would now answer the question that we had on Rav. When Rav said that you need to waive it. He said, you need to waive it? We said whether even if he doesn't have hands, it's fine. It's, no, it's going the other way. That if he doesn't have hands, then it's not good. Okay. Now, Hala Beis Hillel. Yeah, well, yeah, he wouldn't be able to get out of it. But according to Beis Hillel, Yesh Lei Takana. Beis Hillel says that you have to put the shaver on the head. What do? I guess you make believe that you're shaving. But what that really means is that it's okay if you don't shave, because there's nothing there to shave. Which also means that if there's no hands, that's also okay. Okay. Yesh Lei Takana behind the Reb Pedas. And this follows what Reb Pedas says. Damar Reb Pedas. Reb Pedas is probably either the father of or the son of Reb Elazar. Ben Pedas, the student of Rabbi Yochanan. He says, Beis Shammai Reb Elazar Amru Davar Echad. Beis Shammai and Reb Elazar say the same thing. Now, this is not surprising at all, because Reb Elazar many times is not accused, but he's associated with Beis Shammai. We have Reb Elazar Shamuti. He's actually a follower of Beis Shammai. The reason for that is because Rabbi Eliezer's teacher was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Kibel Mihil Beis Shammai. He was a student of both. So Rabbi Eliezer picked up from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai the teachings of Beis Shammai. That's the way, probably depending on when he was a student or something. Well, my Rebbe Eliezer, where did you see anything from Rebbe Eliezer? The Tanya, we have a brisa like this. Now, the brisa that what we're going to learn is about a Metzora. It says, Ein lai bayan yad v'regel. He doesn't have his thumb of his finger, of his hand, or of his foot. It's supposed to be done on the right thumb. They put the blood and the oil, blood of the bird, when the Metzora was becoming purified. They put it on the right thumb of his hand and on the right thumb of his right big toe. In the air. Now, if he's missing his foot, his hand, or his toe, or his thumb, well, Rebbe Eliezer says, "Ain't tare lamas." The Rebbe Eliezer, there's no purification. That's the words of Rebbe Eliezer. Reb Shimon says, you just put the blood or you put the oil on the place where the thumb is, where the thumb should have been. So I guess you put it on but if he has a stub over there, you just put it there. Chacham say, no, you put it on the left one. Okay. Whatever the case is, the view that we just saw is Beis Shammai's opinion is that if he doesn't have palms, so he can't get out of the Nazirus, he's stuck. And Rebbe Elezer's view is if he doesn't have thumbs, so he can't get out of it, right? Ainli Tara, he's always stuck. He's going to be impure forever if he doesn't have thumbs. We see that Beis Shammai and Rebbe Elezer have the same opinion. This was the way of understanding Rav, that when Rav said that if you don't do the waving, it affects the validity, that would be following the view of Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, now Lishnachrina. There's another version to this Gemara. Okay, where Rav comes in and says, Lishnachrina Amrila, I guess. Amar Rav. You have a pencil there. Amar Rav. Rav says, now it's interesting, the Bach switches it to Rava, which he didn't do before. I don't know why now it has to be Rava. Oh, the Rivan in Rashi before switched it to Amar Rava. Rava, not Rav. Yeah, according to other versions, this is Rava. I don't know why I only have a note that the Bach is switching it in the second version and not in the first version. Maybe it was naturally like that in his. Maybe that's how it was in the Bach's Gemara. So you only have to switch it in the second one. Tenufa ben Nazir ma'akeves. The waving by the Nazir affects the validity. So far, so good. Same statement that if you don't do the waving, then he's not purified. He can't drink the wine. Aliba Daman. Now things start to change a little bit. According to who? If you say it's according to Rabbi Lezer that you need to do the waving or else you can't drink wine, Shita, that's so obvious that I wouldn't need Rabbi to say that. Amar Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Lezer tells me that you can only drink the wine after everything is finished. Ella Aliba the Rabbanan. It must be according to the Rabbanan. Here was where we deviated off from the first version. Now, instead of following Rabbi Lezer, Rav was saying it according to the Rabbanan. Now, according to the Rabbanan, you didn't even have to shave the head to drink the wine. Problem is, even without the shaving, he's already able to drink the wine. Right after the blood was sprinkled, it's already good. You can drink the wine. You're telling me that you have to do the waving? Mar says, 1 second. You think the waving doesn't matter? But we have a brisa, and we're going to read this brisa the opposite way we read it before. This is the rule of the Nazir. That means that just like he has hands, he has to do the waving. So too, if he doesn't have hands, he would never get atoned. He would never be purified. It has to be exactly like as if he had the hands. Last time we read it the other way first. And we switched it. Now we're reading it this way first. That you see, that it is ma'akev. Now our question really is,
I just don't understand why the Kohen just can't like just fill its forehead. Fill the carbon
Right. Right.
It's waving.
I think the verse says that it has to go on now in his hand. 1 second. Puts it on the hands of the Nazir after the Nazir has shaven. It's going to be a very difficult, difficult to explain. The waving is done after the shaving, which it clearly says in the verse. So then, and the shaving does not affect he's allowed to drink wine before he shaves. So now, how are you going to say that he's allowed to? He has to wait for the waving to drink. He was allowed to drink before. Yeah. We're in this scenario. Yeah, that's a good question. But it seems that the discussion, in the last discussion, we had a statement from Rava that only went according to the opinion of Beis Shammai and Rabbi Eliezer, which is a very good question. Are there any notes on that? Okay. Well, at least now I understand why the Lishna Achrina is coming in, because maybe it wants it to be the other way. This other version goes, you see, it is ma'akev, because if he has, having the hands is the same as not having the hands. Just like when he has hands, he has to wave it. So when he doesn't have hands, he has to wave it. He's just not able to. So he's in trouble. Bella Haditanya, but we have another brisa that says, if someone doesn't have hair, you're going to say that it affects the validity? 1 second. But Tanya, you have a brisa, Nazir Memayret, if a Nazir is bald, Yisrael says that you do have to shave the head. Now, what that means, shaving the head, means that you're not cutting any hair. See, it's even acceptable to not cut the hair. Exactly the opposite of what the words mean. The words mean that he has to shave his head. Tzarech, and he needs to shave his head. Problem is he's bald, so there's no hair there. Which basically Beis Hillel is telling me is that not cutting the hair is fine. So what we're seeing is that it's not makif. So what are you telling me now that the waving according to the Rabbanan, which was the Beis Hillel, you're going to tell me that it is makif? When Beis Hillel says that he needs to shave his head when he doesn't have hair, what that really means is that he's not able to become purified if he's bald. A Nazir that's bald will never be purified according to this second version, according to Beis Hillel. According to the last version, that was only according to Beis Shammai. According to this version, Beis Hillel agrees with that. We're switching the interpretation of the Brisa. The Brisa says that Beis Hillel says that, start with Beis Shammai. Brisa says that whether he has hair or whether he doesn't have hair. And a bald Nazir, according to Beis Shammai, says he does not need to shave his head. Beis Hillel says he does need to shave his head. Now, what is the meaning of he does not need and he does need? So according to the first interpretation of this, he does not need meant, why bother? Doesn't help anyway. Beis Hillel says, oh no, do it. It's gonna work. There's nothing to cut, but it's gonna work. It's gonna be fine. Second version of this brisa, the way we're learning it now, is Beis Shammai says that you don't need to shave the head because it's fine without shaving the head. It's good enough. Beis Hillel says you do have to shave the head and add the words to this. And since you can't shave the head, you're in trouble. It's exactly the opposite. And according to Beis Shammai, there is a solution. You don't have to shave, it's fine as is. And this would argue with Rav Pedas. Why would it argue with Rav Pedas? Because Rav Pedas claimed that Beis Shammai and Rabbi Eliezer said the same thing. Rabbi Eliezer said that if there's no thumb by the Metzora, then there's no purification. And over here, Beis Shammai is telling us is that if there's no hair or if there's no hands, it's going to be fine. It's Beis Hillel, which means that Rav Pedas, this version is not following Rav Pedas. Okay. Yeah.
Was there a practice for the Nazir to drink wine right away to show that he is free of his restrictions?
I don't know.
Yeah, what if he didn't like wine?
So there was a little
What I'm
ringing over
asking
there.
is why is it important to make this determination?
He wouldn't be allowed to. No.
Because, I would think he's here and he does his thing, and then he leaves the base of mikdash. In which case, the exact moment
No, it says in the Torah itself that he should come.
is not. But my point is, he would do his thing and then he would leave the base of mikdash and then he's free to have a drink. So why is it important to determine whether it's this second or that second in the process? Unless there was some practice immediately to show.
No, the Gemara doesn't work like that.
I know we're trying to.
The Gemara, what is the law, regardless of would this be
The practical.
the practical? No, it's creating law, and that's because when does it become relevant? If he was called outside because it was his brother's wedding, they were doing it down the Temple Mount, ran out and they gave him the bracha under the chuppah and he wants to drink. He's just, still has the hair on his, he didn't do the waving yet.
When he asked a question like that, kind of like for Havdalah, we drink the wine kind of like to show like the separation for the more holy to the less holy.
Right.
Maybe in the Nazir is
Very
like the same
interesting.
situation.
Interesting.
He changes status.
Could be. I assume that there was no drinking in the temple. The Kohanim were not allowed to drink because they were doing the service. What about other people that were there visiting? Were they allowed to drink? I would assume that regardless of that, there was no drinking.
Does it go into any way of measuring if someone drank or not? Or there's no
There was a certain
honor
amount.
system?
There was a certain amount of wine. How would they know? I don't know. This is staggering. And
Well, the Nazir means just that his head is beard and everything else is growing hair.
Just his head. But the Nazir is just the head.
Still has to be shaved.
Yeah.
Not like the ravine where it's shaved.
Right. And the Mitzvah, I think, had to shave his whole body also. Yeah. You see, that would explain Chana. Eli thought she was drunk. And what's wrong? So what? She's drunk. Well, apparently the other people weren't supposed to drink either.
Obviously, she didn't go inside.
Right. As far as she was allowed to go.
I think it was mostly like her feelings.
Oh. You want to say that it wasn't the law. Okay. Gilach ala zevach b'nimtza pasal. Let's say the sacrifice was brought, everything's going fine, and he shaves his head. Then someone comes running and says, "Oh, there's a problem with the carbon was a treifa. We found a lesion in the lung. Don't shave the head. Too late."
Well, back then, could they check the glass?
Yeah, they would have to check.
But they couldn't. You have to check the animal.
Check the animal. They sprinkle the blood.
No.
He thinks he's ready to go. And then they come back and they tell him there was a problem. Well, according to this, tiglach de psula. His haircut is puzzle. Now he has to restart because you have to be able to shave the head. He either has to wait 7 days, we learned once, or according to the other opinion, he has to wait 30 days. He shaves his head before the sacrifice is brought. Remember that? This is basically what just happened there. Zvachav layalulai. And if he brings any sacrifices after that, it's not going to work. Why? Because the sacrifices were brought on a head that was already shaved. They're supposed to be brought when his head is full of hair. Yeah. Let's say the chatas was brought, but the Kohen that was offering the chatas had the wrong intention. He thought that was the oila or the shlamim or the wrong sacrifice. Well, the rule is that if the Kohen has the wrong intention, the animal is still good, the sacrifice is still good, but the owner has to bring another sacrifice. But by a chatas, we say it's possible. So here, in this case, it becomes invalid. So the same rule would apply. There's other sacrifices he brought with the right intention. So now we have a problem. Because the haircut was puzzle, because he shaved right after the sin offering, then the other sacrifices were done while his hair was cut. They're supposed to be done after. Now, they actually could be done after the hair was cut, but only if the hair was cut properly. But here the hair was cut before the sacrifice was brought, even though it was after the sacrifice, but before the valid sacrifice was brought. Let's say the oila or the shlamim was brought for the wrong intention, and then he shaved his head. So we know that the sacrifice is kosher. And then he brings the other sacrifice, which is the shlamim and the sin offering, or the oila and the sin offering. The sacrifice is not valid. Now, this is interesting because even though the sacrifice is valid, the haircut is not valid. Now, even though the sacrifice is valid, but because it wasn't valid for him, it's just considered like a donation offering. As we say that it's kosher, but you have to go and bring another one. What does it mean kosher? So, well, you can continue the sacrifice, the Kohanim can eat the meat. It's just considered a donation. By a burnt offering, there's nothing to eat, but by the peace offering, they can eat the meat. It's considered a valid offering. But the ones that he does afterwards are no good because he shaved his head on a donation offering. It wasn't one of his Nazir offerings. It was one, but the Kohen messed it up. Reb Shimon says, the sacrifice that he brought doesn't count. But the other ones do count. The same, before I explain that, let me just go back to Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon's view, the Gemara is going to explain in a moment, is that the Nazir is allowed to shave his head, even if the Nazir doesn't bring a Nazir sacrifice, even if he brings a donation offering, he's also allowed to shave his head, as long as it's at the right time. So here, that sacrifice that was brought with the wrong intention is considered a donation. Reb Shimon says that's enough to shave the hand. Okay, the next thing is if they slaughtered all of them and they sprinkled the blood and he shaves his head and only one of them was kosher, that's good enough. So you got one in, it's good. And then he brings the other ones that were invalid afterwards. The shaving was good because one of them was good. Amar Avada Barava Zoisimeres. Avada Barava says this tells us the Savar that he holds, the Savar of Shimon, Nazir Shagilach al Shalmin and Davi Yatza, that if a Nazir shaves his head for a peace offering, that's just a donation. He fulfills his obligation. My time, what's the reason for this? The Pasuk says, that he puts the hair that was cut under the offering. It doesn't say on his offering. I guess we'll leave it here.
Here, when it says the hair under the pot.
Under the pot of the
Thank
offering.
you. Have a good Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos.
Okay, shkach. Thank you.